Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something pretty cool. We've got these folks, Kesser and Steen, and they're trying to make their backyard more, well, biodiverse.
Yeah, and not just that, they're hoping to make it like a little carbon capturing machine.
Exactly, like a mini climate solution right in their own backyard. But there's a twist. They're ready to jump right in, but their Oma, I think it is, she's giving them this advice. Patience.
Patience. It does seem a little odd, right? Spring's here, days are longer. You'd think it's the perfect time to make a haven for all those bees and butterflies.
Right. That's what Kesser and Steen think too. But when we looked into it, we found that timing is, well, essential when you're talking about helping pollinators.
Especially the ones that are, well, let's just say they're still catching some Z's. Those butterflies, wild bees. They're tucked away until things warm up for good.
For good, meaning.
Consistently above 10 degrees Celsius. That's the magic number.
Makes sense. So even if we're itching to get out there and like clean up the garden, it's better to hold back. I mean, can you imagine trying to wake up a bumblebee from its winter nap?
Probably not the best idea. Disturbing them before they're ready could be, well, really bad for them. They need those undisturbed piles of leaves, those hollow stems, those spots that look messy to us to make it through the winter.
It's a good reminder that what we think is messy can actually be like prime real estate for these little creatures.
Yeah.
But how does that work for people in different climates?
Mm.
Spring doesn't always show up on the same schedule everywhere.
Oh, for sure. The key is knowing what pollinators are in your area and their life cycle when they come out, all that. Even if it warms up earlier where you are, there are still going to be insects and other good critters that need those undisturbed spots to overwinter.
So before we grab our rakes and go to town, we need to do a little research on who's sleeping in our gardens. And speaking of pollinators, Kesser and Steen really want to attract butterflies and bees. Besides patience, what else can they do to make their backyard like the ultimate hangout spot?
Well, one thing is giving them the right place to live. We know lots of pollinators love those sunny, well-drained areas, like a south-facing slope or a sandy bank that warms up fast in the spring.
Like a little butterfly beach?
Exactly. You want to give them what they'd naturally look for. And, of course, once they wake up, they're going to be hungry.
So Kesser and Steen can't just roll out the welcome mat. They got to stock the fridge, too.
You got it. They need food sources that bloom all season long to keep those pollinators happy. But that's for later. First, we've got to talk about something else that's super important. Embracing the beauty of a messy garden.
Okay, now you got to explain this one. Why are we suddenly fans of piles of leaves and dead branches? Sounds like Oma's wisdom is rubbing off on us.
Well, Oma might have a point. What we see as garden waste is actually like a gold mine for all sorts of creatures. Remember those leaves and branches we were talking about when they break down? Well, it creates this whole web of life.
So it's not just about giving them a place to stay, but food, too.
Exactly. Think of it like a mini ecosystem,
Yeah.
that decomposing stuff becomes food for fungi and insects, even those tiny microorganisms. And then those guys support the bigger creatures like birds and hedgehogs.
Wow, so it's all connected. But I can see why some people might, hesitate to let their garden get messy. Wouldn't that attract pests?
A lot of folks think that, yeah. But when you've got lots of different plants and creatures, it actually creates a balance. You get the good guys like ladybugs eating the bad guys like aphids.
So instead of grabbing the pesticide, we could just let nature handle it.
Exactly. And speaking of chemicals, we found that it's really important to avoid pesticides and too much fertilizer in a garden that's supposed to be, biodiverse. They can actually hurt the critters we're trying to help.
It's like inviting guests to a party and then accidentally poisoning them.
Yeah, not a great look. And it's not just about what we add to the garden, it's also about what we take away. Kesser and Steen, they like things neat and tidy. They might need to rethink their mowing habits.
So you're saying they shouldn't try to get that perfectly manicured lawn?
Well, think about it. A lawn is basically just one type of plant over and over. Not much variety there. The research says it's good to leave some patches of grass longer, especially in the winter.
Wouldn't that look a little unkempt?
Maybe to some people. But remember, we're trying to change how we see what makes a beautiful garden. Those longer grasses give insects and other little guys a place to stay warm over the winter. It makes the whole garden more, well, vibrant.
Speaking of vibrant, I remember reading something about a link between biodiversity and fighting climate change. Is there something to that?
Absolutely. One of the best reasons to have a biodiverse garden is that it can actually help capture carbon.
Now you've got me interested. How does that work?
Remember all that decomposition we were talking about? When things like leaves and branches break down slowly, they actually trap carbon. That keeps it from turning into CO2 and going back into the atmosphere.
So our gardens can actually be like tiny little carbon storage units.
Kind of, yeah. Every little bit helps, right? And when we don't use so many pesticides and fertilizers, we're also cutting down on the carbon footprint that comes with making and transporting them.
So it's good for biodiversity, and it helps fight climate change. It seems like Oma's wisdom might be the key to making Kesser and Steen's backyard not just pretty, but good for the planet, too.
Maybe she's onto something. You know, it's all about understanding that our gardens, even the small ones, are part of something much bigger.
And by letting things get a little messy and working with nature, we can create spaces that are full of life, beautiful, and good for the planet. But how do we make this relevant for people who might not even have a garden? You know, how can they be part of this?
That's a really good point. Because you don't need a huge yard to make a difference, right? It's more about changing how we think about things, realizing that nature isn't just in, those big national parks or whatever.
It's everywhere. It's in cities, in our neighborhoods, even in those little cracks in the sidewalk where, a dandelion pops up.
And those weeds, like we call them, they can actually be really important for pollinators, especially in cities.
Exactly. So maybe instead of seeing them as a nuisance, we can start to appreciate them, Like they're little rebels bringing some life to the concrete jungle.
I like that. So embracing the messiness can happen even if you don't have a big garden. What are some other ways people can help, even in small spaces? Well, you can think about window boxes, balconies, or even just having a few pots on a patio. You can create little ecosystems there just by choosing the right plants, the ones that attract pollinators. And don't forget, it's not all about flowers either. Even a little dish of water can be a big help for thirsty bees and butterflies.
It's about being aware, even in those small things we do. And what about people who don't have any outdoor space at all? What can they do?
They can still make a difference. They can support things like local parks, community gardens, even rooftop gardens. Those places are so important for pollinators and all kinds of creatures, and they make the whole community better.
It shows that we're all connected, even in a big city. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope people will remember?
I think it's the power of just observing, Taking a moment to really see nature wherever you are. Notice the insects on a patch of clover, the birds making a nest outside your window, how the sunlight comes through the leaves.
It's about slowing down, paying attention, and getting back that sense of wonder, that awe that we sometimes lose in our busy lives.
And then from that observation, you can do something. Maybe it's planting some flowers that pollinators like, or leaving a pile of leaves alone, or even just speaking up for more green spaces in your community.
Every little bit helps, right? No matter how small. It all adds up to a healthier planet, a planet that's more biodiverse, and in the end, more resilient.
So channel your inner Oma, let things get a little messy, and remember, even in the city, nature always finds a way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.